Maybe everybody's here. It is now 4 o'clock. This is the Town Council Work Session, Monday, September 11th, 2023, at 4 p.m. Council Chambers, 150 East Monroe Street, Wytheville, Virginia. I will now call this meeting to order. We will be having a discussion regarding a highway safety improvement program, and council will need a roll call vote to accept this agenda. So start with you, Mr. Gilman. I'm sorry. Need a motion to adopt this agenda. Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Again, roll call vote. Mr. Gilman.
Gilman, aye. Patterson, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Ashby's, aye. Johnson,
All right.
Mayor Taylor, today the guest of honor is Director of Planning, John Woods, who's going to give an overview of some proposed traffic changes on Peppers Ferry Road and Monroe Street. I think Peppers Ferry Road stuff is relative to some changes that have been called for a long time on Peppers Ferry Road. There's a lack of connectivity, sidewalk on Peppers Ferry Road, and some lack of ADA access for those that are on walkers and other mobility devices. And then on Monroe Street, I think primarily the focus will be on traffic calming measures that will assist with some of the traffic-related complaints that the council's received over the last year or so. With that, I'll give it over to Dr. Wood.
Thank you. So in your packet, you have a document that showed a few of the techniques that we can use. I'm going to start with the Monroe Street portion of this project. And that first drawing shows a road profile that would provide for 2 lanes of traffic, 1 in each direction, with a protected bike lane on either side. And by protected, basically that means putting some kind of those plastic bollards to divide the vehicles from the bike lane itself. And so this image up on the screen shows an example of one. We've got a little bit of a wide space, big enough for these plastic bollards to separate cars. It gives bicyclists a little bit of extra feeling of comfort. And it also, the main reason I'd be using it here is not so much for the bike lane, but as a traffic calming device. As those things pull in on the lane, it makes the road feel narrower and people will tend to drive a little bit slower. The current profile of Monroe Street is designed for typically for collector streets that have a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. And most people, whether they see a speed limit sign or not, will drive that type of a road profile at around 35 miles an hour. And that's reflected in the data that the police have gathered on how fast people actually drive. Now, with this posted speed limit at 25, unfortunately, most drivers don't pay attention to speed limit signs. They pay attention to what feels safe as they drive. And so if we're going to slow speeds, we're going to probably have to change the nature of the road itself. The next option that we have is to narrow the traffic way. And generally that's done with some kind of a curb bump out or something similar. Another very similar device to that is what they call chicanes. And basically those are devices that force the motorist to steer their way through a particular area a little bit. And as you have to steer and pay attention to the road, that tends to slow people down. And the last option that is shown are these raised crosswalks. And by it essentially creates a speed hump in the road. And so as you drive across that, you're going to be lifted up, and you'll notice that bump as you drive over it. Now, the advantage of doing it with this crosswalk configuration, you've also got the visual presence of a crosswalk, and in combination, those tend to slow traffic down much more effectively. The other benefit of this over typical speed humps is that they're a little easier to navigate for emergency vehicles. The larger fire trucks can go over this more safely than a shorter speed bump. And what I'd like to do now, I've actually got you in our AutoCAD program to see some of the options. So starting at the top left is that structure with the dark roof is Town Hall. So this is First Street. And that's where I'm proposing being the limit of this project. And so for these first few blocks, I show it basically as a bike lane. And when you install a bike lane in this fashion, it will eliminate all on-street parking, which is a challenge here because we have several homes that the parcels don't show an actual, they don't have any driveway that they can pull their car off the street. And so in a number of these homes, it's, they have no place to park but on the street. And so resolving that issue will be a challenge. In the first two blocks here, I show basically a normal bike lane width. And in the next block between 5th and 7th Street, I've shown those with the wider spacing where you could put in the protected plastic bollards to make it a protected bike lane. Coming up to the next block between 7th and 11th Streets, here I've used a combination. As traffic comes in through the signal, they're in the far right lane. So this first island would act basically like the chicanes that you saw in those pictures. But then we'd pull the curb in to narrow the lanes at both ends of the block and provide some on-street parking in the areas where they're most needed. I'll probably add more in up around these houses, but basically was trying to get something that you could look at today. And so this would probably be the most effective tool. Obviously, the option of raising these crosswalks is a possibility. The more we pull in with curb bump outs and raised crosswalks, those are all fairly expensive items to build, where striping a bike lane would be a very cheap fix, except for the fact that we can't easily address the question of the homeowners who have no off-street parking.
Good question, John. As far as cost, is it possible that the areas that are shown in green that are islands and the parallel parking spaces could all be done with temporarily. Like a door strip on where you have islands and then parking spaces in a single wide stripe. Doesn't give you a physical barrier, it gives you a visual.
It would help a little bit. You can definitely delineate the street in that fashion. We don't tend to pay a lot of attention to gore areas. Getting more markings on the road would help. I can't predict exactly how much. It would definitely be a more affordable way to start.
You all know what I'm talking about with the gore area. It's basically like you came into this green area and instead of constructing a curb and an island, you would go in and do the big white stripes. You'd stripe out and put big white stripes and indicate that you shouldn't be traveling.
And so the only thing that concerns me about if we do go and put in an island, the maintenance and the busting of the concrete and things like that, that's the only concern I have. And I really don't want to take really much parking from people parking that live on that street either as well. I mean, I do like the idea of the painting of the lines to try
out on West Main Street, as it narrows down from 2 lanes coming inbound to 1, we have a gore area painted on. So that's, if you want to drive out there and drive in, you'd see it, and most people don't really notice it's there, which is both nice because it's not too obtrusive, but it also, that's why it isn't as effective as far as actually constructing the.
Would there any way, Mr. Woods, would there be any way to put some like little rumble strips on the white paint by chance? Maybe to make it more effective.
Well, rumble strips are an option as far as on the gore area itself.
Yes, sir. Just like you have the white paint that's up there now, but yes, sir, on the side that are not supposed to.
Yeah, you can do that. They make
the ones that are like sunk in.
Yeah, they make
milled in.
A very thick. It's, why am I losing the word? Like elastomeric.
Elastomeric polymer. It's like an additive to the paint that thickens up the mill thickness of the paint essentially and puts down on a layer of plastic.
Yeah.
That creates a little. There actually is a measurable thickness to it. You can see.
Or even the ones chunked into the pavement on the white, where you get a little bit more effective.
The elastomeric paint is vulnerable to snowplows. It'll generally, when they get out and plow, it'll knock those off fairly quickly. The ground in type
yes, sir.
are definitely more permanent as far as giving the rumble sensation.
Has anybody driven down Route 11 to Rural Retreat lately? So VDOT has put in almost like a rumble strips, but in a medium. And in each area they're different, but there's 2 of it. They're going this way, so I'm driving this way, and they're in the middle like this. And so they're like this, but they're rumble sticks. And some of them will be real long depending on the area, and some of them will skip some areas. Not saying, I'm sure it's a very costly thing, but it's sort of something like you were trying to say and putting.
And I don't know the correct term, and I apologize.
That's correct. And you're right in saying they milled them in. And that's what they did on Route 11. So they're actually cut in.
Yeah,
and they're along the lane edge for the median and the emergency strip on all the interstates.
I think the thing to think about with those is they're really not a traffic calming device. They're an alerting device to alert you
wake up.
or you're crossing the line. So that's the thing. So if you do paint, the main idea is the visual impact of it, where you don't have a raised physical 6-inch curve. And I was just thinking even if you decide this is the way to go, like the islands and actually build them in there, it could be a while before that gets done. And I thought a temporary measure might be just strike it out.
Yeah.
And that might be cheaper and gets it done more quickly than construction. So just a thought.
We could pull in some data while it's like that to see if it actually is any help to know how we're moving forward.
The challenge, I think, for John is the timing of the HSIP application is whether or not we're going to do this portion or not, or
Right.
just the pepper spray.
This application is due at the end of next month. And we've got two transportation alternatives applications due at the beginning of next month. And so it's a bit of a crunch time for getting all of these submitted. And there will probably be, if we apply for too much, we may not end up getting the higher priority. And so we need to figure out what's our main goal, what we need to prioritize. I mean, most of this design work was done today, so it's definitely something that will have to be refined as far as the specifics. The parking spaces that you see in this section kind of reflect where the people park now. My intent is to add a little more up near these homes, but
Some of them have off-street parking, but.
yeah, these up here all have off-street parking. These two here at the corner do not have any off-street parking. This house up here has been vacant for a long time, but it also does not have any parking actually on the parcel where the house is located. There's one other house that doesn't have any developed on off-street parking, and that's here just next door to the new daycare center.
And some of the other options here would be, not necessarily coming all the way down to First Street. I mean, you could start at Fifth, which is basically from Fifth to 11th is where we're getting primarily getting a lot of concern about speeding. Once you get past Fifth, you've got a light at Third.
Have a light at First.
At First, that's right. So that does have a tendency to stop speeding. But you could start at Fifth and go on out Pepper's Ferry Road, not come all the way down to the bike lanes and those things for now.
Yeah.
Did you say that bike lane and on-street parking are mutually exclusive?
The bike lane and on-street parking cannot happen together. There's just not enough space.
Sounds like if I heard the council, it is important to maintain some on-street parking for the houses. So I think we could probably, with that thought process, eliminate the first diagram.
Right.
Which is the section from Fifth to First.
Right.
That's the same line of thinking here. It's just maybe hold off on Fifth to First, focus on Fifth to 11th, and then Pepper's Ferry Road. And, should VDOT decide to fund this, HSIP is 100%, correct, John?
It is.
So my thinking on cost effectiveness was on the painting, is it's something that could be done fairly, I'm going to say cheaply. It's not going to be cheap, but it's not going to be anywhere on the order of what constructed concrete curbs would be. Could be done, and then even if the HSIP application is not funded, you've still got some measures to help with your citizens and their concerns.
Are they two different areas that were supposedly?
It would all be one
Pepper Spray
application,
Road,
correct, John?
Well,
Or is it two?
it'll be two. Now, the other project area, we talked a little bit about it in the last council meeting, and that it was specifically in relation to the ADA improvements of the sidewalk. The HSIP portion of Pepper Sperry Road would be a complete road diet, which would take the current profile with 2 lanes in each direction and switch it to 1 lane in each direction, plus a 2-way left turn lane and bike lanes. And it would be, it's the right width of roadway for that, to accommodate that. And so since we talked about it in council meeting last time, I've developed the actual road diet plan a little more thoroughly so that it shows the nature that I'm going to switch back to the.
Mr. Woods, has there been a lot of requests to do bike lanes through the town?
There's definitely interest in it. Peppers Ferry Road and Monroe Street are a national bike route. I don't know if everyone's aware of that. U.S. Bike Route 76. It was the first national bike route. And it's not particularly well improved for that traffic. Now, we don't have a lot of local bike use on that road segment.
That could help.
But if people felt it were safer, we might find that more people locally would ride bikes. So
Any on-street parking on Pepper Spray Road?
there is not any right now because the throughways use all the space up to the curb.
The bike lanes would work.
The bike lanes would work, and we
There's no
wouldn't.
need for on-site right to that area either.
No, everybody already has their parking addressed on site.
So, John, can you talk a little bit about why the road diet? How does the road diet enhance the ability to create the remaining section of sidewalk? There's a piece of sidewalk from Freedom Lane and Hedgefield that's missing. And can you just talk about how borrowing one of those lanes allows us to get that sidewalk?
And right now, if you go up there, there's a dedicated right turn lane onto Community Boulevard.
Zoom down just a little bit.
And you can see through the transparency of the landscaped area, the turn lane that's underneath. By doing the road diet and eliminating that turn lane, it prevents us from having to acquire property from the hotels, which would cause them to lose on-site parking for the hotels in this area, or would require us to build a very expensive retaining wall to separate the grades through there if we were to try and add a sidewalk in the current off the roadway. And so that reduces the costs in 2 ways. We don't have to buy the right of way, and it makes the construction costs cheaper because we're not having to build retaining walls, and
Which are astronomically expensive.
yeah. And so it also would align the road up better with the underpass at the interstate. That bridge up here on the interstate is in the next probably about 5 years will be reconstructed, and they will be changing the profile of the roadway underneath to accommodate. They're going to build, they're going to provide for a shared use path for bicycles off to the side, and then they're going to use our proposed two-way left turn lane plus 2 lanes each direction as a profile under the freeway. And it will give us a lot of flexibility going forward, and if we ever need to widen the street.
Right now, there's 3 lanes where that turn lane is, going into 1 lane.
Right. And so the right turn lane really doesn't help much right now.
I actually like that because they're trying to get the people from their homes, but they're not there in a wheelchair or on foot. You cannot go around that corner, right where you said we'd have to build the wall without being in the road.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on foot, you kind of can step 1 foot on because it's about this big, and then if you're in a wheelchair or any other device, it's literally.
You're taking your life in your hands.
That's why we're here talking about it, because it's very, very dangerous.
Another benefit of the road diet is it actually is another traffic calming device. What happens when you've got 2 lanes in any given direction of travel? If there's somebody driving slow, you can pass them. And so somebody who's inclined to speed, who might weave through traffic, if there were that extra lane there, now is going to be limited by whoever the slowest driver is in front of them. And so doing this traffic or this lane road diet will tend to slow traffic coming into town. So they're going to be a few miles slower on average when they hit that signal at 11th Street, which will help, make the mental transition that, hey, I'm coming into town, I need to slow down.
And that was, if you all remember, one of the main complaints of Grove Street residents was that if the light didn't catch people on 11th Street, really they're just barreling down. So slowing them down before they get there sort of has that dual effect of helping them on the street.
Is there anybody who doesn't like the idea of food diet? Because right now, that's really what we want to hear from you all, is your thoughts, whether you like that idea, if you don't like the idea. If you don't like the idea, like now would be a great time to know so that we don't apply when it's on the. If you're on the fence and you have some questions, just.
What would the alternative be? Just leaving it like it is.
Leave it like it is.
I have appetite.
Road diets, from the general public, the general reaction can be negative because there's this perception that we're going backward. We had 2 lanes going through, and now we only have 1. But the average daily traffic counts for that segment of road are in about the 8,000 trips per day, and a road diet can work on roads with up to 20,000 trips per day. So it's well under the recommended amount of traffic for that type of a street. And it would be a long time before we ever would be exceeding that, I would think.
I do actually like the, 'cause I do actually like the bike lanes. I just think maybe option 3, if we do add some horticulture and things like that, to me, like I said, in the curb and guttering, or the curb, that would just be too much maintenance in the long run.
Well, they can also be a paved surface. Those medians, if you
Could just be fun.
it could be concrete or a decorative paving of some kind. They'll sometimes put stamped concrete, so it's attractive, but doesn't require a great deal of maintenance.
Well, I just would hate to see trucks and things bust that up along the line. But I mean, I'm in favor for the traffic diet, but I do like the bike lane considering that is a main area.
One of the things that we've talked about is changing the route of the bike route and diverting people down Main Street up to Wesley Highway. That would have 2 advantages. One, it would take people through the part of town we want to show off the most. And the other thing is Main Street, the traffic, because of the angle parking, traffic tends to move a lot slower. And so even though to get around parked cars, they're going to be out in traffic, they're in traffic that is already traveling 25 miles an hour or slower because where it is and the way the road's designed.
Would there be enough room for the parking and cars and bicycles?
Are we talking about the Main Street?
Main Street, yes.
The bicycles would need to be kind of sharing that lane with the traffic. But like I say, the advantage is there's because of the nature of the way Main Street is designed with those angled parking spaces, cars drive much slower.
You basically narrow down the roadway.
Yeah, those cars narrow it down. And so Main Street has already gone through a traffic calming design.
Would backing be an issue, though, I wonder, for people backing in, and then here comes a bicycle? I mean, that's just a thought.
As someone I bike into work all the time, I prefer being on Main Street over either Monroe or Spring just because of the speed of the cars. So I can't speak for every cyclist out there, but my sense is that as I've used the street, it's safer than being on the other block over.
Yeah, just real quick, just to make sure we're clear though, that you can't stripe the bike lane and so that would be a problem on Monroe Street from 5th to 11th. Kind of pick one or the other. You can't do both, like as far as the striping.
And you're talking on back towards this way, correct?
Right.
Right, like 5th to 11th. So it'd be 5th is up near St. Mary's. It's the backside of St. Mary's, the Catholic Church, and then on up to Family Fair. And so he had that shown as parallel parking spaces, and then bike lane starting 5th and coming down to.
The intent wasn't that there would be bike lanes on part of it and parallel parking on others. It was to show you a sample of, if we did bike lanes, that's kind of the profile you're going to have. Yes, this is the public on the lower left. And if it's kind of either this
is 5th Street
or that. This is the 5th. That's actually 7th Street, but.
So really 7th to 11th is really.
Well, 7th to 11th is where the two families that have complained live here and here. So that 5th to 11th really is the area in concern. And
So HSIP is 100% funded this year.
it is.
And that's unique to this year.
It was last year as well. What HSIP funding is going toward this last year and in the current round, they're looking at proven low-cost methods that you can apply across your whole system of highways. And so adding crosswalks doesn't cost a lot of money, and it has a clear, measurable safety benefit. And so pretty much if you're adding a crosswalk, they presume that it's cost effective. Whereas these chicanes and curb bump outs, they're not on the list of things that are automatically accepted as cost effective. And so they're going to run a cost analysis based on accident data from this area. Is this going to save enough risk for accidents to justify the cost? My sense is that it may not. We may not be able to prove that adding those islands is going to be an affordable solution for
road diet is, that's correct.
Road diet is.
So this is the reason for breaking this into two applications. And the Road Street application is not a strong application cost benefit ratio. Peppers Ferry Road, because road diet, they automatically give you. So let me give you an example of what a cost benefit analysis like this would look. I don't know if this is how they still score them, but they used to. If you had 10 accidents, they looked at a left turn crash or a rear ending, or you had a fatality. They assigned a dollar value. It sounds more than it's just true. They might say death is $2.5 million. And if you propose a measure that would have likely prevented that from happening, the cost of that thing is $2.5 million or $1 million. Now we've got a ratio of cost versus benefit. And that's how they would score and rank.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like what John is saying is you don't even have to prove the cost effectiveness of the road.
It's basically assumed.
It's assumed. So there is benefit in breaking those two sections into two separate applications. So if you don't jeopardize one, then it's more, nothing's a sure bet. But one, the Peppers Ferry Road project is a stronger bet to get funded. So you don't want to jeopardize it by lumping in these extras. So we filed two applications.
I believe the HSIP is due October 31st.
So we have
Or trick or treat.
meeting, then we have the 25th. Probably need to do by the September 25th meeting so that
Right.
Can we like split them? I mean, you're already splitting them up, so I think it's easier to understand and have straight answer. But about Peppers Ferry Road, as it is further down the Monroe.
Right.
So I don't know if council wants to talk about it that way, just on how many are okay with the Peppers Ferry Road. So that way we can put that to bed if it will be. And then with all the good ideas about the other, which sounds like 3 or 4, just that different ideas in that one strip here on Monroe Street.
Well, and I can take, thoughts that you might have tonight and go back and adjust these plans accordingly to, try and the term value engineer came up earlier today that, that maybe some of these things are less important. If we can throttle that down to a few small curb bump outs that would be strategically placed to slow traffic, And, then we're not taking as big a hit on maintenance or the cost of actually installing it.
Well, I just want to make sure we're satisfying the problem.
Yeah.
Speeding. That's the big problem on Monroe. And then I read here, just like you told us, John, the installation of bike lanes would require eliminating all on-street parking. Well, we know we need some on-street parking. I suppose I'm leaning towards no bike lanes on Monroe.
Yeah,
That's the way I'm leaning right now.
And that's the way we're in agreement.
Yeah.
That for the problem we're trying to solve, the bike lanes don't help.
I just want to solve the speeding. That's our biggest headache.
So if we're not doing like bike lanes, Ms. Atkins' idea of doing something that's sort of bumpy on the sides or something, where it kind of narrows them in, but it's painting, but a little bit in addition to that.
And that's fine with no bike lanes, because like I said before, I would not want to take anybody's parking, because that to me would be a safety hazard as well. So that's fine.
How do we feel about raised crosswalks along Monroe Street?
I like the idea of raised crosswalks because they have to slow down on the crossroad. And, but what kind of problem would it be posed not to break snow? That be a problem?
The way, let me see if we've got that image from your, something like this, where it tapers up gradually. Generally, plows can go over that without too much trouble, as opposed to if they were speed bumps like out here in the parking lot, and you're trying to take that at 15 or 20 miles an hour, you're going to do damage to something, either the plow or the.
It's sort of the extreme, and I don't know if this is an official VDOT term, would be something like a variant of this that's much higher, which we've always called speed humps.
Mm-hmm.
But you see those sometimes where it's actually like it'll give you a jolt. Like this is this trapezoid on the sides is far more gradual, tapered down, and then do you have a flat top?
Yeah, the crosswalk itself has to be level.
6 inches off the ground. Like those would flip the blade on plow.
Yeah, well, this is going to have the same height as that speed hump, except it's going to be more gradual, and it's going to have a flat surface at the center.
What do you all think about
I like the idea, Ken.
My only, it's not a concern, but okay, so if we're putting where we talked about before, putting crosswalks, that's a little bit this way for those families where they live. And so if there's not a red light at the Peppers Ferry Road 11 cross and they're coming down, they're still gonna possibly be at that same speed if that crosswalk is down the road some.
Well, these would be used in combination with either the island or tapering down of the roadway.
So this intersection that's on the screen right here, that's 7th Street. There is a sidewalk on 7th Street, and so there is connectivity that a raised crosswalk there would be right in the middle of the target area. Even if that's the only crosswalk that we raised, it would have the most impact. If we could only do one thing that was expensive, that might be it.
John, and I like the idea, but okay, so if you're going on 7th Street, right? 7th Street.
7th Street.
Down to the
This is the parking lot for Log House.
Okay, so down that way. Okay, so I was looking the other way, but there's not. Is there? I guess there is a sidewalk all the way down there.
Yep, it goes all the way to Maine.
Okay.
Right
I
now,
had it
there's just
backwards.
no ADA ramps at all. Crossing 7th on the north side where there's a little yellow crosswalk up there, there's no ADA ramp between those and there's no ADA ramps crossing the road either. So those are both in principle.
Mr. Woods, is there any way that, back on up just a little bit, could there be, not hard rumble strips, but could there be just like a little alert is, what is it, like usually like 4, when you cross, you can just, like, this is a congested area, pay attention?
Right.
Nothing, no
If
or anything
if
like
we
that.
were to do rumble strips, they're probably going to be targeted up here somewhere near the state electric.
Is
So
that
as
what, could you look into that maybe? Would that be okay with everyone?
And we have, and I think I reported that to you all a little bit. The challenge with those and the reason we would want to move them away from the residences is because if you got 8,000 cars a day going over rumble strips, it's going to be obnoxious if you're out.
that's 8,000 times you will hear that
You will hear-
rumble.
Are there houses up there by state electric?
There are these 3 on the southeast side and this one,
It's been vacant.
but it's been vacant for a long time. I don't know what. There have been several people come in inquiring
For a
what they
long
could do
time.
with it, but none have succeeded in acquiring the property.
I like those and I like them for the alerting, and we felt pretty strong about them being a way to indicate that you've got a speed change. So they could even happen ahead of the intersection. That wouldn't really help so much with the crosswalk other than, hey, if I can get your attention here, get you to slow down now, hopefully by the time you get to the crosswalk, you're still slowed down. When you pinch it in with, it's not a road diet, but you're narrowing the paved surface with either markings or raised islands, parallel parking spaces, and doing the crosswalk, and you have the speed indicator sign. Some of the research that I did in preparing a report for you all a couple of weeks ago indicated that you start to layer these things, then you get the impact, because the research says, maybe this one will give you 3 to 5 miles per hour reduction. This will give you, 2 to 3 miles per hour reduction. And when you start to layer them, you kind of get what you need. That's that.
Right now, the lanes with, allowing for parking, there's 12 feet lanes on Monroe Street, which people tend to speed in 12-foot wide lanes. This proposal would throttle that down to 11 feet. And if you think about Tazewell Street here by Old Stage Mall, those lanes are closer to 10 feet. And traffic goes really slow because most people drive out over the line until they have to actually pass somebody because they're afraid of bumping a parked car.
Talking about
So
me.
10,
Which is really not good crossing the yellow lines.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really not.
So 10 feet will slow down traffic a lot, but it will cause greater hazards than it's worth.
You get a ticket that way, probably.
So, and maybe we can, so just thinking about Peppers Ferry Road, I'm not really hearing any objection to Peppers Ferry Road. So it sounds like to me, it's possible that we can kind of move on from that one. You might, it's your option, that you could bless that one tonight.
I like that idea.
And then would you like to come back with a little more refined plan from 7th to 11th for application number 2 at maybe our next meeting? And then maybe that night we can close the door on that one?
Yeah.
Does that sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
So do you need we'd preferably have an action of council to approve the HSIP application for Peppers Ferry Road tonight? Can we do that?
Gary, do you have any questions, comments?
And then I don't want to confuse matters, but I do want to make sure we're speaking clearly. There is a third application that John has talked to you about for the TA grant, which is improving the sidewalk from 11th Street up to Hedgefield, or maybe just beyond Hedgefield, where The
Goes all the way up to-
entrance ramps and all the ADA ramps up through there are not actually ADA compliant. So that's actually a third application I believe you all have already endorsed.
They have already endorsed that. That's
So
one of the two transportation alternatives grants that you addressed in the meeting. Yeah.
So they're actually, there's four. There's two HSIPs here, there's a TA grant here, and then there was a TA grant for another Heritage Walkway, correct?
No, it's actually the
other crosswalks.
It's actually the sidewalk gap up on Pepper's Ferry. So all four projects are in the same general area.
Just different funding.
So right now, we would just need a motion to, to forward with the Pepper's Ferry.
I have a question. John, did you tell me you need a resolution?
Yes, we will need to do a resolution, and which hasn't been prepared yet. So if you want to wait for the formal until we have that, that's fine. It's just knowing that you're happy with developing these plans further is what I need right now.
So once we get the resolution, then we can go ahead and move to.
Then that's when we would do a formal vote to endorse the project. And we can do both of the projects at the same time.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. You're
Wood.
welcome. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
I didn't know you were a doctor. Well, thank you, Doctor.
Thanks.
Anything else, or we could just a 10-minute recess? And maybe, else? Work session is adjourned.